welcome to Thar's Garage. In this video, I'll be working on the B74.2 and I'll be installing the decoupled slipper clutch conversion kit, part number 92364. I believe the new kit that they just released, the B74.2 Champions Edition, comes with the decoupled slipper included. If you have the original B74.2, it does not have it. So I believe it's like $130 option part. So I went ahead and got it because I know the X-Ray guys have it. And I do notice that they're a little bit quicker in some areas on the track than I am. So I wanted to go ahead and get this, put it on my car and try it out. So I didn't find any videos on YouTube for this. So I'm gonna go ahead and make one. And then I'll probably do another video on my review of the kit, my thoughts, how it makes the buggy handle, and whether or not it's worth it. So let's go ahead and dive in. Let's get this opened up. All right, it comes with a one-sheet manual. I looked at this online. It's kind of confusing on the later parts, but the first portion's pretty explanatory, so we'll go ahead and follow it and then figure out the rest as we go on. It comes with two different spur gears, a 72 and a 78. I believe the B74.2 stock size that I put on my car was 78 tooth, so I'll go ahead and use that, and I'll put the 72 tooth away. Let's go ahead and open the rest of these bags. Okay, so first thing I noticed in the instructions, it says to use some silicone grease on the one-way bearing that's installed in here, and that is not included. It doesn't even mention that it's not included in here. I don't have the silicone grease that Associated is recommending. Part number is 6636, but I have some Kyosho high durability ball diff grease, so I'm going to go ahead and use that. I believe it's like a type of silicone grease that might work well in this application. So let's go ahead and continue. So we're going to need our slipper nut, which looks like this. And then we're also going to need our slipper shaft, along with two N3x3 set screws. So install the smaller diameter here away from the silver section, and we're just going to thread it on. And take note that there are some flat spots. So there's a flat spot here and here, 180 degrees apart. So I'm just going to thread it on all the way. We're going to adjust this later on. And actually, I'm not going to install the set screw just yet. Next, we can go ahead and install our decoupled slipper spring, just like so. Then we have our slipper hub front. And the hub front is going to look like this, and the hub rear looks like this. So make sure you use this one. And we're going to put this towards the spring, and it's kind of keyed so it can only go on one way. Next, we're going to install the slipper pads onto the spur gear. And it looks like we're facing these walls towards the front slipper hub. So you can see on this side there's no walls, and on this side there are. All right. Put our other slipper pad on. Next, we can install our slipper hub rear, and it's keyed as well. So you just got to line it up with the flats, and there we go. Next, we can install our decoupled out drive, which is this piece right here. So the shaft has a hole in it for a pin, and the out drive has a hole in it as well. You can see right there. So we want to line those two up, and then we're going to install the CVA pin through the two holes. So line up the two holes. You might need to wiggle it a bit, but once it's in, we can install the 10 by 15 by 4 bearing. That's going to be the smaller of the two bearings that we received. So before I install these bearings, I'm going to go ahead and clean them out and lube them, and I'll be right back. All right, so the bearings have been cleaned and lubricated. I want to make sure that you do that just so that way you have a peace of mind that there is some lubrication in the bearings and they're not dry. So I went ahead and installed the 10 by 15 by 4 bearing. It's the smaller one that came in the kit. And then we're going to take the M3 by 3 set screw and we're going to install it into the decoupler, the decoupled out drive. And I'm just going to add a small drop of some blue Loctite on there. And you can use a shock wrench that came with your kit to hold the out drive while you tighten. There we go. Now we need to use the other CVA pin, and on this silver section right here there's a hole. So we're going to install the CVA pin in here, and then we're going to install the front slipper hub. So the front slipper hub has a slot in it for the pin. So we can insert that pin, and then we're going to line up the slot of that hub with the pin just like so. Next, we can install the front slipper pad. And then we're finally going to install the slipper out drive with one-way bearing. So it shows to put some silicone grease in here, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Alright, so what I'm going to do here is I got a Q-tip, and I'm going to cut the cotton portion off of it. And then I'm going to use this to kind of work some of that grease into the bearings. I don't want to use anything sharp that might nick the bearings. So just got a little bit of grease. I'm going to carefully insert it in here and work that grease into the bearings. I'm going to take some alcohol and just wipe that face off. Make sure that I don't have any grease on there. That's going to contaminate the slipper pad. Nice and clean. So now we can go ahead and install this. So now we need to assemble the thrust bolt, thrust bearing, and thrust spring. So we have our thrust spring. We're going to put our thrust bearing onto there. And take note that the thrust bearing, there's like 2 plates that come with it, and they are grooved. So you can see that it's grooved right there. On the other side it's flat. So you want the groove sides, the grooves facing this little thrust bearing that looks like this. So I'm going to put one of these like thrust washers on. And then I'm going to take some of this black grease, and I'm just gonna put this on, put some of this grease in the groove. Now I'm gonna go ahead and put the thrust bearing on there. Next, I'm going to go ahead and add some more grease to the groove on the other thrust washer. Making sure the groove is facing the bearing. Go ahead and install that. Next, I can put my spring on. So now that is ready to install with some blue thread locker. So added some blue thread locker. Now it's going to go into the slipper out drive with the one-way bearing. And we're going to go ahead and tighten it down. Not all the way. It shows that we need 8.3 millimeters from the top of this out drive to the head of that screw that we just put in, the thrust bolt. All right, it says the one at 8.3 millimeters. I've got that. Now there's a gap that we need to have between the slipper nut and the front slipper hub, and it's recommending 2.1 millimeters. So I'm going to go ahead and install one of these M3x3 set screws in the slipper nut, and then use that to rotate for my adjustment that I need. All right, I've got 2.1. So I'm gonna add a little bit of blue Loctite to this set screw and make sure that it goes onto the flat of that thread. Make sure you're not gonna install this onto the thread itself. There's 2 flats and 2 holes that you can use to install the set screw, so make sure you use the correct one. I can show you that. So the slipper nut has a hole here and a hole 90 degrees from there, and there's flats 180 degrees apart, so you should be able to get the adjustment that you need. All right, so this is done. Now we can get the chassis prepared with the correct mounts, brace, and it looks like we're going to need a new servo mount as well. So let's go ahead and get those on there. And we also have a new CVA bone that we're going to use. So we need to take the old one off and install it to get this completed. So the instructions are kind of vague here, so let's follow along. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and remove the existing slipper clutch and the front CVA. We're going to keep the screws because they did not include any in the kit, so I believe we're going to have to reuse what came with the original kit. So we're going to need to remove the front mount here and the front drive shaft. So let's remove the front mount first. Turn the chassis over. It looks like it's going to be these 2 screws. And then we need to remove the servo mount itself. So let's remove these 2 screws here and here first. let's go ahead and remove the steering servo and the steering link here, that we have better access to the front drive shaft. So in order to do that, we need to remove these two screws here and here. Set that aside. All right, so let's go ahead and remove the front axle. I think the best way to do that is to remove the Ackerman piece or the steering rack and just move it out of the way so we have access to that screw. So looks like just removing one gives us enough access. We just have to rotate the axle and the blue piece here. You can see that there's a hole, but you can't see the screws, so we need to rotate it until we can see that set screw, and then we can remove it. And be careful when you take this off, because there is a small shim. You don't want to lose that, so you need to put that back on. So take the set screw all the way out. We're going to remove this blue collar, and now we can replace the axle. So to do that, we just remove the pin. There's like a CVA pin in here. You can remove that. And there's a CVA barrel. You can remove that. And then re-grease everything and reinstall. So this is the CVA barrel that came out. So I put a little bit of grease on there. With the new CVA bone or axle, we're going to install it. And we want to line up the hole with the slot. Just like that, you can kind of see the hole there. Then we're going to install this piece here and line up the holes. And then insert the pin through all the holes, just like so. And now we can install this blue collar, and that holds that pin in place so it doesn't fall out. So now we can install this back onto the chassis, and I'm going to apply a little bit of Loctite on that set screw. And so we're going to install the shim first, and take note that the pinion gear that this is going to install on has a little slot for that set screw. So you want to make sure you line that up. So you can see there's a little hole for that set screw. So you want to make sure that we line that up. And then I like to just rotate that blue collar away so that set screw doesn't back out. Now we can go ahead and reinstall this screw for the steering bell crank. So now I think we should install our center bulkhead and slipper assembly, and then reinstall our servo. So take note when you're going to install this that this is directional. So this is the top, this is the bottom. So note that the top has the larger section here, and then this side is going to face the front of the vehicle, and this is going to face the back of the vehicle. There's a small lip here that holds the bearing in place, so you want that lip to be facing the front of the vehicle so that the bearing doesn't fall out. So we're going to install that with M3x8 flathead screws, and I'm going to make sure that there's some blue Loctite on there. So that new center bulkhead is installed. So now we can go ahead and install our new slipper clutch assembly. So just install our axles into the grooves and then put it into place. Front and rear are in place. So we need to install the center bulkhead spacer in the rear. That's this piece right here. And it is directional, just notice that curve. So that curve is going to install like so. And then we're going to install the center bulkhead brace on top of that. Set the chassis aside, and I'm going to install the new servo mount onto my servo. So this piece stays with it, but the top piece and this mount right here gets replaced. So I'll just remove those. And it looks like we're only going to need 2 of these screws that are on top. So I'm going to add a little bit of blue Loctite to these screws. So they are going into aluminum. Alright, so it's going to install in this orientation here, just like so. Okay, so the new servo mount is on the servo. Now we can install this onto the chassis. I add some blue Loctite to the, I believe these are M3x6 screws. Alright, I can just reattach our steering link. And there we go. So that's it for the installation of the decoupled slipper clutch. So pretty excited to try this out. So in case you don't know what this does, my research was basically on the X-ray site, and this is kind of what they say about it. So the one-way slipper that's in the front with the one-way bearing allows you to adjust the slipper off power handling, which influences how easy the car is on landing and under high-speed braking, as well as prevents traction roll at corner entry. So basically what it does is when you're braking, the front wheels are not connected to the slipper clutch and the motor, so they spin freely like a two-wheel drive buggy. So what it does is it prevents the car from diving so much and generating front grip, which would cause it to traction roll. And then it's supposed to control better on power handling of the car, from like smooth up to aggressive acceleration. So the off power braking slippage, we might get like 40 to 50% less in the front, but then you get 100% on power lock with the decoupled slipper. So it's pretty unique design, pretty excited to see how that works. Like I said, I feel like it's a little quicker. Like I've noticed the X-rays are a little quicker on some of the tighter turns on the track, and they just handle better, and they're not very picky on tire selection. I feel like the B74.2 is really dependent on tires, and you have to run, in my opinion, fuzz bites or maybe the pin swags in the front, for it to really bring out the potential of the car. It can't run other tires like the swaggers, J-Concept swaggers. but I've noticed with the X-rays, they just generate so much front end grip coming out of corners and things like that, that you can put whatever tire you want on there, and they do really well. So pretty excited to try this out. I just gotta remount my transponder, plug in my servo, and I'm pretty much good to go. And then I need to design a new holder for my battery cables so they don't get caught. But that's it. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please stay tuned for the next video, which is going to be my thoughts on this. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see y'all in the next one.